Okay, so we have been reading the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, and we read this excerpt yesterday, and we annotated it for the normal notice and note sign post that we've been working with. Now, since we've gone over text structure and specifically cause and effect today, we are going to look at this excerpt again, and we are going to analyze different examples of cause and effect in this text. So, just like we've been doing, I'm going to do the first part with you, and then you're going to do the remainder in this Nearpod. Let's get started. So, last time I annotated in this aqua color. This time I'm going to use pink so that it's easier to tell the difference between our notice and note annotations and this time our cause and effect. So cause and effect is in pink. I lived in Master Hugh's family about 7 years. During this time, I succeeded in learning to read and write. In accomplishing this, I was compelled to resort to various stratagems. I had no regular teacher. My mistress, who had kindly commenced to instruct me, had, in compliance with the advice and direction of her husband, not only ceased to instruct, but had set her face against my being instructed by anyone else. It is due, however, to my mistress to say of her that she did not adopt this course of treatment immediately. She at first lacked the depravity indispensable to shutting me up in mental darkness. It was at least necessary for her to have some training in the exercise of irresponsible power to make her equal to the task of treating me as though I were a brute. I'm going to pause here. So I've noticed that he says that, yes, he learned to read and write, and that it was initially his mistress. But because of the mistress and the direction of her husband, that is the cause and the reason for why he was not taught by them and for why he had to seek out these different strategies for learning how to read. So the cause is the mistress and the husband and the cultural expectations at this time that you didn't teach slaves how to read. And then the result or the effect, what happened, was that they didn't teach him how to read. And we can even take it a step further and say that another effect is that it causes him to seek out different ways of learning how to read. Let's continue. My mistress was, as I have said, a kind and tender-hearted woman, and in the simplicity of her soul she commenced, when I first went to live with her, to treat me as though she supposed one human being ought to treat another. In entering upon the duties of a slaveholder, she did not seem to perceive that I sustained to her the relation of a mere chattel, and that for her to treat me as a human being was not only wrong, but dangerously so. Slavery provided as injurious to her as it did to me. When I went there, she was a pious, warm, and tender-hearted woman. There was no sorrow or suffering for which she had not a tear. She had bread for the hungry, clothes for the naked, and comfort for every mourner that came within her reach. Slavery soon proved its ability to divest her of these heavenly qualities. Under its influence, the tender heart became a stone, and the lamb-like disposition gave way to one of her tiger-like fierceness. Okay, so we see several examples. He says it many different ways that because of slavery, she moved from being pious and warm and tender-hearted to it says to divest her of these qualities. So, and it says under its influence, she became like stone or became fierce. So these are different examples of because of slavery, she became a cruel person. She now commenced to practice her husband's precepts. She finally became even more violent in her opposition than her husband himself. She was not satisfied with simply doing as well as he had commanded. She seemed anxious to do better. Nothing seemed to make her more angry than to see me with a newspaper. So here, the newspaper and seeing him with it makes her angry. She seemed to think that here lay the danger. I have had her rush at me with a face made all up of fury, and snatch from me a newspaper in a manner that fully revealed her apprehension. She was an apt woman, and a little experience soon demonstrated to her satisfaction that education and slavery were incompatible with each other. From this time I was most narrowly watched. If I was in a separate room any considerable length of time, I was sure to be suspected of having a book, and was at once called to give an account of myself. All this, however, was too late. The first step had been taken. Mistress, in teaching me the alphabet, had given me the inch, and no precaution could prevent me from taking the L. So here we have a however, which is one of those keywords we're supposed to be paying attention for. And he says that because, so the cause was that she, at the beginning, when he first came to stay with him, she taught him the alphabet. And so as a result, he had this desire to learn. That was the effect. And then he enacted this plan to keep learning. The plan which I adopted, and the one by which I was most successful, was that of making friends of all the little white boys whom I met in the street. As many of these as I could, I converted into teachers. With their kindly aid, obtained at different times and in different places, I finally succeeded in learning to read. When I was sent of errands, I always took my book with me, and by going one part of my errand quickly, I found time to get a lesson before my return. I used also to carry bread with me, enough of which was always in the house, and to which I was always welcome, for I was much better off in this regard than many of the poor white children in our neighborhood. This bread I used to bestow upon the hungry little urchins who in return would give me that more valuable bread of knowledge. So here we have another cause and effect. The cause being the physical bread. He used this bread to get the young white boys to teach him how to read. So this bread was the cause, and the effect is the result of learning how to read. In the next slides, you are going to annotate the rest of the passage for these cause and effect structures. You can annotate it just like I did by underlining the first part and drawing an arrow to the effect. Have a good day.